Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with a heartwarming story that takes a twist you won't see coming. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. Entitled person wants me to leave because I look like Santa. So, I'm homeless. No, I don't drink, and no, I don't do drugs. I'm trying to get a job, but finding employment when homeless is not an easy task. Something I need to get out of the way. Every few days, I take a trip to the library to charge my phone and batteries so I can keep my phone on and working. I typically spend 3 to 4 hours in a quiet corner of the library, glued to the power outlet charging. Today, I had a cute, then frustrating interaction between a little kid and its parent. I walked through the sliding doors of the library and wandered around looking for an open chair near an outlet to sit and charge. I heard this little voice shout out in excitement and glee, "Santa!" and pitter-patters of little boots running over to me. Now, I get it, I really do. A big bearded man dressed in red with big black bags and an oversized backpack strapped over his shoulders, any little kid would easily mistake me for the big jolly man. The kid stopped dead in front of me. She was clenching her fists tight, trembling in excitement. She couldn't have been more than 4 years old. She looked up at me, her eyes opened wide, and uttered the word, "Hi, Santa!" That made me smile, and I laughed. Her mother came running over, scooped her child up, and said sorry to me, walked away, and told her kid that's not Santa. The entire interaction put a smile on my face, but here's where it went downhill. I found an open seat and plugged in to charge and do my thing. The little kid and her parent were on the other side of the library, but the kid was still brimming with excitement. I could see her head poke out of the bookshelf, staring at me every so often. That went on for about half an hour. Until, I guess, the mother couldn't handle her child anymore and she came over to me. She asked me to leave and find a different spot because I'm distracting her daughter. I said, "Hey, I'm sorry, but this is the only open space with an outlet. I need to charge my stuff." She very sarcastically said, "Oh, why's that?" I replied, "Because I don't have one. I'm homeless." I thought that was the end of it because her face went red and she walked away. But no, she came back. She went up to the front desk to ask if there are any outlets outside and if it's okay for me to use them. Seriously, she said that the library is okay with me using the outlet outside to charge, so I can go out there. I asked her, "So why don't you want me in the library, a public institution, to charge? You'd rather me sit outside just because your kid thinks I'm Santa? Really? That's it?" I looked at her and said, "Well, ho, 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 Merry Christmas to you. I'm going to stay right here until my batteries are charged." The lady went to the front desk and I listened in because I figured I'm screwed, I'm getting kicked out. She asked them to tell me to leave. They said they can't unless I'm intentionally making a disturbance, being violent or threatening. I've been here before, I keep to myself and don't bother anyone. So yeah, I was there for 4 hours. I didn't move or get kicked out. My things are charged and good for the next few days. Honestly, not the worst interaction I've ever experienced. At least she was somewhat polite. Edit. I don't think she was being malicious at all. I think in her mind she was doing a good deed. The entitlement. If her daughter was being that distracted, why didn't she try to do something? And trying to have you kicked out, how are you supposed to control the attention span of a 4-year-old? Looks like the parent needs to do a lot of work. Such entitlement can be rubbed off onto a child. I found something my ex-husband accused me of destroying, and I returned it. My marriage, we were both in our 30s, this is important, had problems right away. One of the manifestations was him berating me for not going to an elite university. I went to a very good undergrad and an even better grad school, had not finished at that point, but he went to one of the best schools in the country, known for graduates with a chip on their shoulder. That was really all he had on me, and I would just laugh. Even his parents told him he was being a jerk and sounded like an idiot because I had an impressive education, something I had never felt the need to discuss before. So anyway, he became really competitive about his college and especially his friends from college. Very few he was still in touch with. This was before Facebook. And he had this photo box full of memorabilia. Cardboard, no lock or anything. I had a dozen or so myself. A normal thing would be to go through his and mine together and share the memories and stories and bond. I didn't really care about what was in the box, and college stories are boring when you weren't there, but I would have listened. But the box became a symbol of everything wrong, with him constantly saying I'm not good enough for his college friends. At some point, he forbid me to look in the box. Of course, I didn't take this well. Telling me I wasn't good enough to see what's in the box was like kerosene. It got brought up in every fight, like a death spiral of, you're jealous of my friends. Your friends suck, and I wouldn't like them anyway. I didn't say I was the hero in this story. Fast forward through years of abuse. We moved on to more spectacular fights, and the box fell pretty far down the list. Then, for some reason, one day he went up to the attic and couldn't find his box. He said I threw it away because I was jealous and petty. I didn't, but after a few years of this, he managed to convince me maybe I did. That's how abuse works. And you threw away my box, went back into heavy rotation. I begged his forgiveness and fell into deeper depression over the depths to which my life had sunk. Finally got a divorce. Cops, ROs, the whole nine. I healed, moved on. Years later, I sold my house. It was mine before. And when I was packing up, I found the damn box. I had such an emotional reaction, my legs buckled. I sat on the floor and wept. My boyfriend was really sweet about it. He didn't know about the box. It's so ridiculous and I was so ashamed, but mostly I'd put it all behind me by then, until it all came rushing back. I called a mutual friend and asked him to come get the box so they could get it to him. People suggested I should throw it away out of spite, but I had something to prove. Before I turned it over, I put copies of 2 unpublished essays I wrote about what he did to me, along with a handwritten note. I knew you didn't have the balls to kill me, and I sold your D&D books. Who's he gonna tell? I mean, he probably will, but then he has to admit what's in the essays, and he's the 52-year-old man complaining 10 years post-divorce that his ex-wife sold his D&D books? Sounds like proof you can go to one of the best colleges, but it won't cure stupidity. And in this case, not a predictor of success in life. And our next story. My neighbor is vandalizing their side of my fence because it's facing them and therefore it's theirs. I live in Minnesota. I own our house. In May, I had a fence put in, a 6-foot cedar privacy fence. It encloses my backyard and runs up my side yard as well. We had our property professionally assessed and marked where the property line is, and we put the fence on the property line. My neighbor has just recently moved in. Their backyard is fenced on 3 sides because all of his surrounding neighbors have fences, so the side we share is fenced my fence. The neighbor behind him has a chain link fence, and the neighbor on the opposite side has a slightly taller chain link fence. The side of the yard facing the road is open. Driving home from work the other day, I noticed they had painted all over the side of my fence that faces their yard. Not like all one color, but just painting random crap. The kids, 2 younger kids and 1 possibly 13-ish, were let loose, and it's a mishmash of colors and pictures and whatever. I'm pretty upset by this, as the fence was not cheap. I got home and asked the SO what we should do, and then I went over to talk to the neighbor. The neighbors, as it turns out, are entirely psychotic. The husband answered the door in his boxers and right off the bat was defensive. He stood there, chest puffed out like he was going to fight me over it. I explained that I didn't appreciate him painting on my fence. I didn't actually get much further than that because he blew up at me, ranting about how since it's on the property line, the half of the fence that's facing them is their fence, and they can do whatever they want with it. The wife showed up at some point, absolutely hammered, and added to the chaos. I eventually bowed out and went home and told SO that we should just let it go. It's just paint, and I know that if we have any extended negative interaction with the neighbors, it's probably going to be a never-ending headache. But now they're vandalizing it. It's being used as a backstop for what I think is a set of throwing knives by the younger teenage boy, as well as airsoft target practice. They're hanging screws and nails into it to hang targets and stuff. Paint's one thing, but the physical damage will shorten the life of the fence. I guess I'm just wondering if what they said is true. I'm finding minimal info about it. It is on the property line, but the idea of the side facing them being their side seems ludicrous. But I can also see that being a thing since it borders their yard. Update. After talking to my SO, I decided it was time to get some legal advice. I reached out to a local attorney specializing in property disputes. The attorney confirmed that even though the fence is on the property line, it's my fence and the neighbors have no right to paint or damage it. The attorney suggested documenting all the damage with photos and videos, which I did. With this evidence, I filed a police report for property damage. The police came over, looked at the damage, and took statements from both parties. They warned the neighbors to stop vandalizing the fence or face charges. Next, I sent a formal letter to the neighbors drafted by my attorney demanding they cease all damage to the fence and stating they would be responsible for any repairs. I also installed security cameras facing my yard, not directly into theirs, to monitor any further vandalism. And our last story. My neighbor is stealing my water. I've been dealing with really low water pressure in my home in Scotland, UK. At first, I thought it was just a minor plumbing problem, but when it didn't get better, I called the water company to check it out. What they found was shocking. The water company sent a technician to inspect my place, and they discovered that my neighbor had been using my water pipe without telling me. This unauthorized use was why my water pressure had dropped so much. I was both angry and confused about what to do next. I decided to take action right away. First, I documented everything. I saved all the information and evidence, including the communications with the water company and any reports they provided about the unauthorized use. This was important to have a clear record of what was going on. Next, I tried to handle it directly with my neighbor. I wrote them for a formal letter explaining the situation and asked them to stop using my water supply immediately. I hoped this would solve the problem, but my neighbor ignored my letter and kept using my water, which made things even worse. Realizing that talking to my neighbor wasn't working, I went back to the water company for more help. They suggested installing a separate water line for my neighbor to stop the unauthorized use. They also mentioned that I might need to take legal action to enforce this. Feeling overwhelmed, I talked to a solicitor. He recommended sending a cease and desist letter to my neighbor, which he helped me write. The letter explained the legal consequences of continuing to use my water supply without permission and demanded they stop immediately. I also thought about mediation to resolve the issue without going to court. A mediator could help us reach a fair agreement, but my neighbor was still uncooperative, so mediation didn't seem like it would work. With no other options, I reported the unauthorized use to the local authorities, including the council and a consumer protection agency. They took the matter seriously and started their investigation. Finally, after weeks of dealing with this mess, I got some good news. The authorities stepped in and ordered my neighbor to stop using my water supply immediately. They were also required to install their own separate water line to prevent this from happening again. Plus, my solicitor successfully negotiated compensation for the inconvenience and costs I had to deal with. In the end, my water pressure returned to normal with no more worries about low water pressure or troublesome neighbor. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.